Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Preston here, and this is my reaction to my Seattle Mariners. Seattle, let's go. Turn up, man, let's go. My Seattle Mariners defeats the Blue Jays 6-2 in game, I believe, in game five, and shit like that. You know what I mean? So the Mariners, dude, all we need is one more win, dude. But yeah, man, this was, man, bro, and shit like that. This came from a frustrating game to like to just like a miracle, bro. To like a blessing of a game. Like literally, from like I'm just saying, dude, and shit like that, because it's just like we weren't hitting shit in that game, bro. Like literally, bro. Like we were not hitting shit in that game. Like I am just saying, bro. Like like we were hitting stuff, but that was more kind of later. But at the same time, though, I wouldn't kind of blame it on the players because we're playing very hard overall. So I would never blame the players, and shit like that. I just think it's just more of the pitching, and shit like that of the Blue Jays because that's the thing and shit like that, like they're pitching like they came back double back and their pitching did really good, and that's why they won the last two other games and shit like that before that game. Even in this game they were still pulling through with that, and stuff like that, you know what I mean? But the one thing that changed it all was that what changed it was our switch up, because then we finally realized that what they were doing the whole time was they were just trying to foul ball to try to get our brain off of our equilibrium. Try to throw the ball where it looks like a foul ball, and then throws a strike, and shit like that. They kept doing that to throw our minds off, and shit like that. And they were doing a lot of balls, and shit like that. A lot of them, like they were doing that throughout, like, the first win that the Blue Jays had, the second win that the Blue Jays had, and even in this win, even in where the Mariners won. Honestly, they've been kind of doing that all game, but all through the ACLS series, but especially in these past three games they've been doing that, and shit like that. So as long as the Mariners can, then my Seattle Mariners can stay clutch and realize that, and shit like that, and be patient. And the most important thing, do not swing when it's a foul ball. Because if you don't swing when it's a foul ball, and shit like that, like we need to realize what is more fair and what's a foul ball, and stuff like that, because if it's going, more near our like kind of our section, but it's more kind of foul, but it's still in like the hitting range and shit like that, like where like the Empire will call, like a strike, regardless of anything and shit like that, like even if it was like barely through, like, and shit like that, like even if it wasn't even through, even if it wasn't like straight through, like through like the pitching box, and shit like that, if I would say, and shit like that, even though if it didn't go straight through the pitching box, or not the pitching box, I would say, like, just basically the direction of where the ball's fair, and shit like that, like we need to know when where that ball is fair and when it's not fair, and when it's fair enough where we can hit that ball, because all they're trying to do is do anything they can do to get that ball to the side. That's all they're doing, bro. Literally, dude. Like that's all they're doing, bro. I am just saying, dude. As long as we can know that, dude, what can they fucking do, dude? And shit like that. I mean, they could do a lot. I'm just saying, but both teams are showing a lot. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit like that. We just need to show that power, and shit like that. Show what we're made of, and shit like that. Because look at our pitching, bro. Our pitching is a fucking one, bro. Literally, bro. I don't mean to curse about this. I mean, realistically, I mean, this isn't really fully for kids, and shit like that, but at the same time and shit like that, like I'm just saying, and stuff like literally, bro. Our pitching is A1, bro. Literally, bro. Once we make back to that switch up where we need to make consistent outs, and shit like that. We've been back, bro, with our pitching. We just need to continuously continue with these outs, and shit like that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit like that. We got to continue with these outs, and shit like that, because literally, man, because the Blue Jays, man, like literally, bro, they did not expect what was to come, bro. Literally, they thought this was gonna be an easy game for them, and stuff like that, and they could just walk through us, bro, and shit like that. And look what we're doing, bro. We're up 3-2. We were up 2-0. But I mean, honestly, I mean, like, like that was kind of the magic right there for us, when it comes down to winning in good fashion. But if we could win tomorrow, bro, if we could win tomorrow, man, literally, bro, like all we need to do is win tomorrow, and then we're up, and then we're to the World Series, dude. That's all we need to do is to win tomorrow. That's all we need to do, man. And for us to beat the Blue Jays 4-2, this would make a massive statement for us, dude. Literally and shit like that. And I know the Blue Jays, the fans, they are not gonna want that because they are mad right now, bro. But literally, bro. But same for the Mariners fans, bro. We've been angry, bro. We've been through the slumber, bro. Literally, I'm just saying, like, the Blue Jays have always been fucking good. Always been in the playoffs, and shit like that, Like, one, I think, yeah, they won the World Series a couple years ago, against the Tampa Bay Rays, and shit like that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit like that. So right now, like in overall, their history is better than ours and shit like that. You know what I mean? They've been to the ACLS tournament, like probably like definitely more than the Mariners have, and shit like that. So this is a huge moment for us, man. This is a huge. Either way, I'm looking for a fair fucking game, regardless of anything, man. And shit like that. But literally, bro, that like this, like, I don't even know what Mariners stands for, bro, and shit like that. But just off of how they have the spear, and shit like that, like, I'm guessing that means of a warrior, and shit like that. You know what I mean? So we're a warrior, man. We're gonna go and we're gonna fight until the end, until we win, and shit like that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit like that, And this is, man, bro, we just gotta continue what we're doing, bro. Just periodically, man. It's just like, just simple as that, bro. And shit like that. You know what I mean? Because, like, bro, it's like we have to play the Blue Jays, bro. And if we could beat the Blue Jays, bro, I am just saying, dude. If we could be able to beat the Blue Jays, dude, this will put on a statement, bro. Because I already know them Yankees fans, and shit like that. I mean, they'll be happy, but I mean, at the same time, I'm pretty sure there's gonna be Yankees fans that are gonna be pissed, and shit like that, because they cannot believe that. But either way, bro, and shit like that, we gotta wait until game day, bro, and shit like that. We gotta wait until game day, bro. We gotta play hard, dude, because the Blue Jays, bro, they're gonna go into this game ready, wanting to fucking win this game, bro, and shit like that. They're already trying to find the next plan to the next plan to the next plan, bro. We just need to play our game, dude, and shit like that. We are the aggressors. We are the big dogs, and shit like that. They are the ones that's trying to find a plan of trying to do whatever. We need to stay clutch and stay confident and stay what is it called? Fuck, what's that word called and shit like that? It's damn, and shit like that. We have to we have to be consistent with this, and shit like that. Consistency is the most important thing. The one thing I do know, they cannot be fucking consistency, bro. And shit like that. You know what I mean? Because literally, bro, because both teams are showing its all, bro. But literally, bro, I am just saying, dude, and shit like that. So we gotta be confident, bro. And the one thing, bro, we need, honestly though, like, I wouldn't like say to walk Vlad every single time, but as much as we could, we don't need to have Vlad to bat, bro. And shit like that, Like, I could care less if we walk that dude. Jimenez, I mean, he's a dangerous motherfucker, and shit like that. George Springer, prayers up to you. I don't know if he's playing in the next game or not, and shit like that, but he's extremely fucking dangerous, and shit like that. Really, everybody on their team is pretty dangerous, and shit like that when it comes down to their hitting, and stuff like that. But their top three dogs, and shit like that, of George Springer, and shit like that, remind me of Jerry Springer. Rest in peace, Jerry. But, reminds me of George, basically George Springer, Jimenez, and Vlad, and shit. They're all good players, but the main guy really that we gotta worry about is Vlad. That's the main guy we really just gotta walk because every fucking single time, bro, this dude wants to be clutch, dude. Like literally, and also George Springer too, man. Honestly though, prayers up to him, but I ain't gonna lie, when he was out the game, bro, that kind of benefited us, and shit like that, because that boy was just hitting them runs, bro, and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing and shit like that, like I'm just saying, like, but we gotta have a hat on him, too, really on all three of them, on the whole team, but on all three of them. But the main person is Vlad, man. Like that boy, like he'll do he like any moment is a moment for Vlad. It nothing is a limit for that dude. And shit like that. That's the one guy on their team that I will say that's very smart when it comes down to how he bats. And shit like that. You know what I mean? Because the Blue Jays are more known to having extreme athleticism. Of course, they're smart with their playing, but they're more known with their athleticism, and shit like that. Vlad is known for his athleticism and and like how smart he is of how he can hit that ball, and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like there's no limit to when it comes down to that dude, bro. Like literally, man. I'm just saying, man. So I feel like I feel like a big thing of what we got to do in this game is that realistically is that we got to walk Vlad, bro. And shit like that. You know what I mean? Like not every single time. We also got to put pressure on him too, and shit like that. But also just not don't just pitch to him, man, because that was a good call, bro, and shit like that, where I believe, like, where Vlad was about to be next to hit, but then after that, we called to not, that we weren't gonna pitch to him, and shit like that, you know what I mean, and basically, so basically he got a free base, and shit like that, you know what I mean, but that was really fucking smart, though, and shit like that, because he's their most clutch player. Like everybody else is clutch and can make clutch plays, but we can handle everybody else and shit like that, besides one player. And that's Vlad, and shit like that. I don't think anybody can handle him, and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing and shit, and yeah, and shit like that, But but realistically, we just gotta worry about everything, man. Because this is our game, bro. And yeah, man. But good job, Mariners, man. We just gotta keep this up, bro. And shit like that, But just like I said and shit like that, like I feel like the another smart tactic of what we need to do is that we need to really depend off of walking Vladimir Herrera. And that boy is a beast, bro. Literally, like when I seen how he effortlessly hit that ball and it almost went out the park and shit like that one time and shit, I was like, dog, and he hit a few home runs against us and shit, but but like that one hit, bro, I was like, nah, bro, and shit like that. We can't be letting this dude just be out there and hit like that, and shit like that, like we can't just let that slide like that, like we gotta, walk this dude. But I wonder if we're only allowed to do so many walks and then we have to. But that's bullshit though, and shit like that. I feel like that's a fair play though, and shit like that. Well, I feel like it's also because not unfair because also because what if every single team then walks that one player and then they can't hit anything, and shit like that. You know what I mean? So I think so I don't really know and shit like that, but all I know is that we gotta depend off of walking Vladimir Herrera, and shit like that. Because of course, like I don't think of every single time we have to play ball, and shit like that, but we have to do anything where that ball honestly we should do what they did where we distract them with balls, and shit like that, to be honest with you, and ball them, strike, ball them, strike, and shit like that, but the one thing is that we don't do it as fluent though, as the Blue Jays, like, because if you look when we throw the ball and shit like that, we're kind of like, like we kind of do things on accident, like usually most of the time whenever it's like a ball or it's like or and shit like that, like usually it's kind of on accident, like they mean to throw it through, like through the like through and stuff like that, but it's not going through properly and shit like that, you know what I mean? So so basically, like, that's the thing, but then they also do it intentionally and shit like that, too, and shit like that, and that's the thing and shit like that, but yeah, and shit like that, you know what I mean? But sorry about that, guys. Okay, where is that? It's stop, huh? And stuff like that, but yeah, sorry, because I'm thinking because there's like a mini leak, in my house and shit, but it's not major. We'll take care of it and shit like that. You know what I mean? But yeah, and shit like that. You know what I mean? But that's the thing and shit like that. Because yeah, man, and shit like that. It's just this is a big game, man. Big opportunity for us, bro. An extremely big opportunity for us, bro. And it just that's the thing, bro. It just we can't blow it, bro. And it just and overall, our team is looking confident, like we're the number one team, and shit like that. You know what I mean? So that's the thing and shit like that. It's just like we came into this game, bro, like completely unexpected when it came down to how competitive we were. All I know is I knew how competitive we were gonna be and shit like that. You know what I mean? Because literally, as a Mariners fan, bro, literally, bro, I'm just saying, like, we got a powerful fan base, bro. Like, I'm just saying, dude, and shit like that. We got a powerful fan base, man. And that's the thing and shit like that. And it's just more of that. I believed in our batting, our playmaking, and shit like that. Like it just like the Mariners are 90 and 63, and shit like that, like this year, bro, and shit like that. I mean, like, obviously we're gonna be pretty damn good, and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing and shit, like, and that's the thing, and shit like that, But man, bro, and shit like that. This is what we need going into the World Series, and shit. If we win it, if we win this, because the Blue Jays got elite to batting, bro, elite to pitching, elite defense. They got everything elite, bro. Literally everything elite on our team, bro. The Mariners, bro, like I'm just saying, bro, and shit like that. Our defense and our pitching is elite, but our batting is most definitely not elite, and shit like that. You know what I mean? That's the one thing on our squad that we're kind of missing. But well, besides Cal Riley, and shit like that. But Cal Riley needs a little bit more help, But I mean, he still got Julio Rodriguez, Polanco. We got a lot of fucking monsters, bro. It's more about that. I just want to see them, like, double back and play harder, because right now it's more of just like, well, I mean, Polanco's like playing good too, but Julio Rodriguez, man, you got to step the fuck up, bro, and shit like that, you hit that 3-run grand slammy, and shit like that, you know what I mean? But it's just like you got to be more consistent with them bats, bro. Like come on, man, and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing and shit like that. You got to be more dependable than that, because Julio Rodriguez is supposed to be like our second best guy on our team, and shit like that. And he hasn't really been doing much, and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, besides that 3-run grand slam and shit like that, and that's the thing and shit like that, and that 3-run grand slam was like, what, like, I think, like, I think it was like 2 games ago, heading on to 3 games ago, I think, and shit like that, but yeah, and shit like that. But yeah, man, but you gotta step up though, buddy. Because Julio, he's hella good, bro. But he's supposed to be the star prospect of that team. Him and Cal Riley and I would say Eugenio Suarez. Those are our well, I would say the top two is Cal Riley and Julio Rodriguez. Those are supposed to be our top guys, man. Like Julio, man, you gotta step up, dude. You can't be striking out, man. Like you can't be looking like a fool on that mound, and shit like that. You know what I mean? On the batter's mound, and shit like that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit. Like you gotta step up, hit that ball, dude. And shit like that. You know what I mean? Like I know you could do it, man. And shit like that. I mean, you hit that 3-run homer, but I want to see more of those and shit like that. Like two of them, or at least like some some effective like hits, and stuff like that will get, you a base and stuff like that, and stuff, like we gotta get bases, we gotta get help from you, Julio, and that's the thing and shit like that, and yeah, because if we got help from Julio Rodriguez, bro, I'm just saying, dude, like Julio, like when Julio is on his A game, he's hitting those home runs in his sleep, bro. Like literally, like on the times when he's doing good, bro. Like that's the thing and shit like that, Like he'll look like Cal Riley for a second, and shit like that, And that's the thing and shit like that. Like he's that good, man, and shit like that. It's just we gotta see more of that, man, and shit like that. It's like you're kind of like almost like our point guard of the team. We gotta have those consistent hits, man. And shit like that. Because he's supposed to be our consistent hitter. And shit like that. Like big dumper Cal Riley. He's our home run guy. Our grand slammy guy. And shit like that. Him and Eugenio Suarez. And shit like that. And oh yeah, I need to talk about Eugenio Suarez more. And shit like that. But him and Eugenio Suarez and shit like that, like that's the thing and shit, those are our home run guys. Like Rodriguez, he's our consistent hitter. Like we gotta get you active, man. And shit like that. Cause if we get him active, man, because if you look like, cause in I believe like I know in game one and game two, Julio was good in those games, especially game two. He was going off. I think he had like two, like one or two home runs, and shit like that. And then he had like how many, like hits, and shit like that. How many base hits, and shit, and stuff like that. He was a good factor of why we won that game. It's just like we like he needs to go back into that, and shit like that. We it's almost like we're playing without him and shit like that. You know what I mean? We got you gotta get into that, man. And shit like that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit like that. We gotta, we need to see more of you, man. And that's the thing. But yeah, man, and shit like that. But yeah, and stuff like that. Before I get into Eugenio Suarez, and shit like that, let me do some real quick. But last but not least, Eugenio Suarez. Man, bro, I'm just saying, man, like Eugenio Suarez, like he's made a name for himself, bro, throughout just the whole playoffs, bro. When we played the Tigers and when we played the Blue Jays, he just has been showing out, bro. Just showing out, bro. And I'm just saying, dude, because it's just like, and it's just now it's to the point where it's just like he's becoming one of our like dependable hitters. Where it's just like when we need him, he's gonna show out. You know what I mean? And it's just like that's the thing and shit like that. And he might be the ones where it's just like, where like I'm just saying, I'm not gonna say too much, and shit like that, but Eugenio Soares is one of them ones, bro. Like, I literally almost lost my fucking voice from, I still got it. I still got my voice, thank God, and shit like that, But I literally almost lost my voice after that home run, bro. Literally, bro. Like, I'm just saying, like, like when I seen that ball go up, I was like, oh, I knew he hit that shit. But when I see or heard that crowd go like, oh, because the crowd don't lie, bro. Like, that's the thing. Like, when that ball is like when they're really screaming and shit like that, like that, like, because they can see like where that ball is going. They can see like how far it's going in the distance. They knew that ball was gonna be a home run, and shit like that. You know what I mean? And like that's the thing and shit like that, and literally, bro, and shit like that, and Eugenio Soares, bro, he hit that shit, bro, and he like that was a damn good fucking hit, bro. That was out of the park. No chance that fucking that outfielder was gonna get that ball, man. There was no chance he was gonna get that fucking ball, bro. I mean, it was well the effort, and shit like that. Tried to use the leverage of the of the wall, and stuff like that, But it just that was just too high, and shit like that. But well timed fucking ball, well timed hit from Eugenio Soares, man. And it just we needed that. And the way of how our and of course, the way of how our team capitalized, and ended the game beautiful, and shit like that, Like that's the thing, man, and shit like that, And we were in the slumber, bro. We were in the slumber throughout the whole game, bro. But once we needed it the most, bro, we came in clutch, bro. We came in clutch. The coaching was great, and shit like that, And that's the thing. Dan Wilson, you're the fucking man, bro. And shit like that, And I'm just saying, bro, you're the man, bro, and shit like that. Whatever you're telling these guys, bro, and shit like that, you are the fucking man, bro. And that's the thing, man. It is just we gotta just keep this up, bro. We gotta keep this up. We gotta keep our confidence to the next ball game, and shit like that. And that's the thing, man. And shit. We gotta continue what we're doing, bro. This is a fight, man. The fight ain't over, dude. And shit like that. If we win this last fight, man, and shit like that, then we're on to the World Series. But this is one more win, man. One more win away, bro. One more win away, man. Praying to the Lord of Jesus Christ, bro. One more win away, bro. That's the thing, bro. And that's it. And yeah, man, and shit like that, But yeah, and shit like that, But what a crazy homer, bro. And the one thing and shit like that, with the ball, and shit, that was about to be a ground. It was about to be a strike because, the ball went through, like through where it was a fair ball and shit like that, But you could see where the ball was about to go, where it was about to hit the ground and shit like that, where Eugenio Soares, where the ball was about to hit the ground, and shit like that, you know what I mean? And Eugenio Soares just seen that shit, fucking hit that shit, picked that ball up, bam, bro. Fucking hit that shit right, fucking just right out the field, bro. And shit like that. Beautiful, bro. Even though it wasn't like the best homer you ever seen, but honestly, that was the best like homer moment of like ever, bro. One of them, bro. And shit like that, man. And that's the thing is just we gotta win this last game, bro. This is the last game, man. Eugenio, we need your clutchness, man. That is the thing, bro. We need your clutchness, bro. And shit like that. As long as we can stay clutch and shit like that, and be able to, to play clutch, bro, and you do the same thing, but with more consistency, bro. Like, I'm just saying, bro, it's gonna be a tough, bro. Like, it just, the Blue Jays ain't gonna know what they gonna do, and shit like that, and that's the thing and shit like that, But also but also this, I'm gonna also have this for last though. One more thing for last, and shit like that. The one thing though, we have to get better at our home advantage, dude. I know it gets distracting at home, man, but we can't be getting distracted and let the away team get like the advantage and shit like that from the crowd. We can't let that happen, dude. That is what happened to us Not the last game, but the game before that and shit like that. That's what happened, and that's why we got blown out. And in those two games, that's why we got blown out. And shit like that because the crowd was electric, and it was kind of distracting and shit. So it kind of got into our heads and shit like that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit. And that's kind of why we kept fouling and shit. We need to not let that get into our head. We need to let that motivate us and shit like that for us to do better and shit. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit like that. But, but if we can do that, that would be lovely, and shit like that. Because literally, like, because then we can stay consistent of what we can do more easier, and shit like that. You know what I mean? Of hitting the ball, drive balls, where the balls, continuously go into the ground, where we have time to get bases, home runs, all that shit, bro. And shit like that. Just all out offense, bro. And shit like that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, But of course, we need elite pitching, but we need all out offense, and shit like that in this game because that's what we need help with the most right now is our offense, and shit like that. But yeah, and stuff like that. But, that at the same time, that is it for me for tonight, and shit like that. And yeah, man, and shit like that. I'm very pumped for that win. But, what time is it? Hold on, guys. Shit. But yeah, it is it's about so like 12:26 or some shit, and shit. So yeah, man. So, the Mariners, I will see you guys play today, man. More later today, and stuff like that. Shoot, let me see what time the game is. And for all my baseball fans out there, the game's gonna start at 5:08. I believe. Either way, get prepared at 5 o'clock. And shit like that. You know what I mean? And yeah, and stuff like that. And that's what time the game's gonna be. And stuff like that. Is 5:08, and the game is going to be in Toronto. And stuff like that. You know what I mean? And yeah, and shit like that. And wait, hold on, let me double check. Yes, the game's gonna be in Toronto. And yeah, and stuff like that. But yeah, but thank y'all for watching this video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. I'm Preston. Peace out. Go Mariners. Let's go.